Well, hello race fans. Welcome to the channel. This is the first time I've ever really done something like this, so I appreciate you clicking on the video and giving it a go. To start, this video is about why I like Formula One. Even if you're not a fan of racing or Formula One, there are some things here that you might find interesting about the sport, just as I have. This is a video about why I think Formula One is awesome. If you're not a fan of racing or Formula One, there's something here that you might find interesting about the sport, just as I have. So let's get into our first topic of why I love Formula One, and probably the most obvious one is the wheel-to-wheel racing. So even though the overtakes might be low in some races, you still cherish each one. They're pretty hard to come by in Formula One because the cars are so fast and the drivers are so skilled most of the time. Each time an overtake happens, it's usually pretty exciting. You get to see a fight develop over several laps, so maybe you're not seeing a car overtake one another lap after lap, but you get to see two cars slowly develop a battle over time, maybe 5 laps or even 10 laps, and then a move finally happens, and that's what makes it so incredible, in my opinion. At such high speeds, Formula One makes wheel-to-wheel racing super exciting. It's always fun to watch two cars and drivers go head-to-head millimeters from disaster while keeping it all together, making it an exciting race. Even when the overall racing isn't as exciting as it could be, though, we still have the strategy element to watch unfold during the race, which leads me on to my next topic of discussion, is the strategy. That's good. Even if we don't get an exciting race with lots of overtakes, the strategic element is still interesting aspect that sometimes I think is overlooked. A race is normally 50 laps or more, so there's plenty of time for the strategy element to play out during the entire race. A race is normally 50 laps or more, so that's plenty of time for the strategic element to do its thing behind the scenes. And when we get a race with less overtaking, the strategists are still hard at work to make advancements happen. When a team pulls a masterclass in strategy, it turns a seemingly dull race into a super interesting strategic chess match between the teams and drivers. Through a good strategy, a slow car could potentially get a surprise win. There's construction right outside my house. Hope you can't hear that. In 2020, there was drama in the Italian Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc crashed heavily and brought out a red flag. The race was stopped. When the race resumed, Pierre Gasly with fresh tires climbed to second. His team had fitted fresh tires during the red flag stoppage. Lewis Hamilton was leading the race but had to come into the pits to serve a 10-second penalty, which put Gasly into the lead of the race. As the laps wind down, Pierre Gasly held off Carlos Sainz to win his first Formula One race. Sure, crazy things in this race happened to lead to that result, but Pierre Gasly and the strategists, they were all in the right place at the right time, and in the end they made a good call, and that put Pierre Gasly in a shot to win a race with AlphaTauri. It was a dramatic finish, which segues nicely into the next thing that makes Formula One so awesome, and that is the drama. Throughout a season, you get to see several stories develop up and down the grid. It's not always watching the top two teams battle it out for the championship. The midfield battle is also super tight, and it's always super entertaining. Some drivers form rivalries that didn't exist before the last few seasons, like Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Once they both got in cars that were competitive enough to win the world championship, that kind of forced them into a rivalry that we got to see develop last year. The races can also change in a split second. It could be a mixed weather conditions race. A lot of the times in Spa, we get parts of the track that are dry and parts of the track that are wet. So that also leads to some dramatic elements thrown to a race. Also, a heavy crash could bring out a safety car. When a safety car does come out, it bunches the field back up, and some people are on different tire strategies and different tire compounds. Just leads to some great racing once the safety car comes in. Okay. One example of drama happening during a race was the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the finale of the 2021 season, which has been talked about a lot, and there are some strong opinions about it, but I'm just going to talk about it for the sake of the drama aspect of Formula One. So, in the late race, a safety car was brought out because Nicholas Latifi crashed into the barrier, and there wasn't that many laps to go. I believe the safety car came out with about 6 or 5 laps to go, I think, or maybe 7. But the safety car came out, and there was not that many laps left to run. So time was running out to finish this race. You never want to see a race finish under the safety car. It's kind of a dull end to a race and a dull end to the season. I mean, this is the last race. So the organizers did all they could to clean up the wreck as fast as they could. The safety car was still out with 2 laps to go, so before the 1 lap mark. And Michael Massey, who was governing the decisions then, decided that he was going to let the lapped cars unlap themselves behind the safety car because Lewis Hamilton was leading and Max Verstappen was second, but there was 5 lapped cars in between them. Normally, you would let the lapped cars go by before the race restart, but that's usually you have lots of laps still to run in the race, and they don't want the lapped cars to interfere, so they let the lapped cars go by the safety car, go all the way around the track, and back behind the field, so they can resume racing like they're all on the same lap. But there's only 1 lap to go, and they decided only to let the 5 lapped cars between Hamilton and Verstappen go by, not the lapped cars behind Verstappen. This initiated all the drama. So Mercedes felt cheated because the organizers didn't follow the rules properly. So Verstappen got to creep up behind Hamilton. Hamilton had worn hard tires, so not a lot of grip, and Verstappen had new softs, so he had all the grip in the world, and inevitably the race resumed. Verstappen got past Hamilton in the last lap and won the race, ultimately winning the world championship. So that was definitely a dramatic close to the 2021 season. Some might say a little scandalous, which brings me up to the next thing that I just love about Formula One, and I think it's another reason why it makes it awesome, is the scandal. Who doesn't love a good scandal, if I'm being honest? I mean, come on. It's super fun to watch unfold. It's hilarious to me sometimes when you have professional sports teams, like in Formula One, all pointing the finger at one another, like they're children on a playground, and someone took their favorite toy or wasn't being fair, so they go tell the teacher. During an F1 season, there will inevitably be some sort of scandal between 2 teams. One of the most recent examples was the Racing Point. Their car was dubbed a pink Mercedes when they almost did a 1-for-1 copy of Mercedes championship winning car. Just because of that, there was new rules brought out to where you couldn't just sit and take pictures of someone else's car and try to replicate copies of it. Some other ones that go a bit further back, though, was Spygate during the 2007 season, when McLaren was disqualified from stealing information from Ferrari. Now, there was definitely some inside trading of an employee leaving Ferrari and giving some information to McLaren, but I mean, you can say no. That's still illegal to accept another team's information, just copy some things about their car. Actually, an interesting thing about that story is that when McLaren was receiving the Ferrari data, they went to bring it copied so they could send it to the team. And a loyal Ferrari fan noticed these official Ferrari documents and ended up sending this whole thing into a whirlwind by saying something. So that's pretty cool, I think, the fans getting involved with catching a scandal. I think that's super interesting, which is why I'm talking about it right now. Schumacher, one of the greatest drivers of all time, arguably one of the kings of Formula One, is even guilty of scandal. He tried to take out Jacques Villeneuve I always have problem pronouncing. I don't know. I'm probably not even saying his first name correctly. That's what you get for being an American F1 fan. You don't know how to pronounce every name sometimes.
Jacques Villeneuve.
Jacques Villeneuve. Jacques Villeneuve. Okay, we're gonna go with that. So, Schumacher tried to take out Jacques Villeneuve in the final round of the 1997 season in hopes of becoming world champion. So it was a scenario much like the race with Hamilton Verstappen last year, where whoever won the race was going to be world champion. If neither of them finished, Schumacher would have been champion. Jacques had to win the race, or at least finish ahead of Schumacher. So in the closing stages of the race, Jacques went for a move on Michael Schumacher. Jacques went on the inside. He was almost alongside him, arguably. Like, way too late for Schumacher to close the door, but here comes Schumacher, just closes the door, really tries to take him out of the race, honestly. Like, there's no other way to say it. Schumacher tried to take him out of the race. He didn't succeed. Schumacher ended up having consequences of his own, and when he made contact with Villeneuve, he went off into the gravel and beached his Ferrari and couldn't continue. So he really took himself out of the race. Villeneuve became world champion, and later Schumacher had to go to a meeting with the FIA, and he got all of his points taken away. He got disqualified from the 1997 championship because of his antics. And I'm a huge Schumacher fan. I think he's a great guy and a great driver, but sometimes you just gotta experiment. You gotta push the boundaries a little bit, and that's what Formula One drivers do. At the end of it all, scandals or cheating usually screw up something about the championship, and we don't always like to see that, but sometimes I just find myself intrigued by what goes on in Formula One. Like, it's so much more than just racing and getting a paycheck. And I just love the stuff that comes out of this crazy world that we call Formula One. As far as the scandals I'm not a fan of, I'd probably have to go back to that one time in 6th grade. The next thing I want to talk about is the drivers and teams. And now, the drivers and teams are obviously the main part of Formula One. They are the ones in the spotlight, but there's a whole other side to the teams that we don't see. A typical F1 team has around 500 to 1,000 personnel. This includes the drivers, the mechanics, the pit crew, and all the people back at the factory working behind the scenes, crunching all the numbers and data to make the car fast, to make the racing happen. It truly is a team sport, and if you disagree, you're wrong. You're just wrong, okay? It's a team sport. Formula One is a team sport. Even if you only see the driver in the car on the track, the driver doesn't build the car. He just races it. There's a whole team that builds the car and makes it run. I just get a little passionate about that subject, because I've had several people tell me that it's not a team sport, but it is a team sport. I'm talking to you. The drivers are superstars who race at breakneck speeds. A lot of the times Martin Brundle will refer to them as gladiators, and rightly so. Some of them have struggles that they have to overcome during a season. They have to work around problems of the car. It's not as easy as one might think, and it's really fun to watch a driver battle with those struggles and overcome them. It's fun to root for someone who's put all this work into climbing the ranks and getting to the top of Formula One, like Esteban Ocon. He didn't come from a super rich family, but he made it, and it's super cool to see drivers and people, because they are people, make it like that. It's super fascinating. The wide range of personalities really adds some life into the sport, provides some hilarious moments. The press conferences with the drivers are usually fun to watch, and I would say the best way to consume this content is just search on YouTube Formula One funny moments or Formula One press conference funny moments, something like that. They're just gems, and I think they're so hilarious. The drivers really are. A lot of them are funny. A standout to me is Sebastian Vettel. He's always cracking jokes in the press conferences. He's like Formula One's dad. Like, that's a great way to describe Vettel. He's just hilarious, and how could you not love the guy? So the drivers, they like to joke around, have fun, just like you and I, and sometimes they can be pretty relatable. You know, even their job is racing multi-million-dollar cars, but some of their stories are still relatable, and at the end of the day, they're kind of just like you or I, which makes it just more fun to watch, I think. So if the drivers are relatable, and they're fun to watch and listen to, then that means the cars and the technology and everything in Formula One must be relatable too, right? Now you might be thinking, how is Formula One relatable to me? And to that I say, it's not, because you drive a crappy Econobox like I do. No, I'm just kidding. I do drive a crappy Econobox though. Well, Formula One I think is still relatable to the general public, because it has to do with the technological advancements. Hear me out on this, because there's a lot of things that, even if you don't watch Formula One, there's a lot of things that you can thank Formula One for that you use in your day-to-day life. Trust me. And really, these technological advancements in Formula One and racing in general is one of the biggest things I love about motorsport. First off, let's talk about fuel. Formula One's always pushing the envelope when it comes to fuel. They're always striving for more efficiency, better fuel consumption. Brands like Shell have teamed up with Ferrari to make fuel with less friction so that your car can burn cleaner and go further on a tank of gas. And right now, I'm pretty sure Formula One is trying to develop clean burning fuel that has barely any carbon dioxide emissions. So in that sense, they're keeping the game relevant when it comes to fuel if you have a car that still takes gasoline. Next, there's a few more goodies underneath the bodywork of your car that you can thank Formula One for. Active suspension, automatic braking systems, and traction control have all been perfected and have come out of Formula One. And this was back in the 80s and 90s when this technology was being used by teams in Formula One, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. So if you're in driving conditions that are less than optimal, and like snow or rain, and there's not a lot of grip, you can thank Formula One for the extra traction that you have in your car that helps you get to where you're going without killing yourself or wrapping your car around a tree. Another benefit that we have has been going since 2014, and that is more advanced hybrid technology. Since Formula One has been experimenting with hybrid technology, we've seen the manufacturers in Formula One like Renault, Honda, Ferrari, and Mercedes coming out with more advanced hybrid technology and even electric cars. And really, I think this is exciting because once we transfer to using different forms of transportation, we know that there's still going to be fun, fast cars for us to enjoy, even if they are all hybrids or they're all electric. These teams are putting in tons of research and development, racing these systems in Formula One to prove that they can be reliable and usable in road cars. Because these Formula One cars that we've seen are the most reliable race cars we've pretty much ever seen. So it's really cool to see that translate into our road cars, and we'll eventually get better transportation because of racing. And there's so many more things that we could thank Formula One for giving us that we take for granted sometimes, but that would take a lot longer. And I could probably go on forever, and I don't want to bore you to death. So this is probably a good place to call it. Those are just some of the things that I really love about Formula One and why I think it makes the sport awesome and super fun to watch. Even if you're not a race fan or a Formula One fan, there's still lots of things that you can appreciate about the sport, and hopefully some of the things that I've shared with you here pique your interest, and maybe you'll go check Formula One out. Now that I've said that, I really thank you for watching the video and checking out my content. Like I said, this is the first time that I've ever done something like this, and it's really exciting. I think it's fun to shoot videos. I used to edit videos a lot when I was in middle school. I think it's pretty fun to get back into it, so you could help me out a ton if you liked the video, and maybe subscribed, because I'm gonna try to come out with a video at least twice a month, or at least recapping some of the Formula One races as they've come out. And I want to do some other content too, just some fun content, we could call it. Even if you don't like racing, I kind of want to make the world of racing fun and interesting, and just bring these motorsport stories that happen throughout the year to you guys. So yeah, if you could like the video and subscribe, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. Well, that's the first video done and dusted, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. So until then, hope you have a great day.